Welcome back to Inside City Hall. The city is moving to close 2 jail facilities by the end of November. The Manhattan Detention Complex, also known as the Tombs, and the Otis Bantam Correctional Center on Rikers Island. The decision is part of a larger plan to close Rikers by 2026. But my next guest says that the closure of these 2 facilities will lead to overcrowding. Joining me now to talk about that and more is the president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association, Benny Boscio. Welcome. Very nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to meet you too, Errol. Pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Tell me, first of all, about the health of your members. Last time I spoke, I think with your predecessor, there were some real serious concerns about the level of those who were testing positive, and that there were even a number of fatalities over the last few months.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had 8 members pass away due to COVID. We had about 3,000 members out sick, whether they were quarantining or actually testing positive. I believe 1,400 officers tested positive for COVID. That is a huge amount, and I guess it plays into my next question, which is, what are your concerns about the closing of the Tombs and of the Otis Bantam Correctional Center? I mean, is the concern that there'll be more overcrowding, or is this just in general an idea that you didn't like? No, absolutely. The concern is major. I mean, look, the second wave is upon us. There's clusters and spikes in Queens and Brooklyn. We have like red zones. Like, now is not the time to talk about closing facilities and bringing, 800 inmates and about 1,600 officers, condensing them. Right now, the officer population is about 8,400. We have about 4,400 inmates. Now's the time to allow for social distancing and to spread out the population, to have less inmates in each housing area to allow us to social distance properly. What sense does it make, Errol, to put us all together by closing 2 facilities, especially when everybody's talking about this second wave that's upon us? It absolutely makes no sense at all.
Is any of this subject to negotiation or even collective bargaining? Are these contract provisions that you can talk about with the city?
I mean, yes. I've reached out to City Hall. I've brought forth my concerns. They're very serious concerns that we have. Look, the department dropped the ball the first time around. 8 members died, right? Like, there's no time to do this for us right now. So yes, I'm requesting meetings with City Hall so that we can negotiate this further. I brought my concerns. I've been assured that we will be addressing my concerns. And that's where we're at right now, Errol.
Where are things right now with the Brooklyn House of Detention? Is that fully shut down at this point?
Right now, the Brooklyn House of Detention is shut down. We have the Brooklyn courts still operating right now.
Got it. So what with the decline in population, I mean, the way this was explained, or if you want to put it this way, sold to the public, was that there's a declining population for a number of different reasons. And with the smaller population, you need fewer buildings, and therefore there should be kind of a consolidation. Is that what's actually happening? Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, you don't necessarily want to keep open a bunch of empty buildings, right?
I mean, during COVID, that now's the time to close facilities. What sense does that make, Errol? Like, how are we closing facilities? The jail violence is on a rise. My members are under attack, right? We have lesser inmate population, but violence is continuously spiking. The department is housing inmates by gang affiliation instead of classification. So they created little armies in each facility, right? And if a housing area has the capacity, for argument's sake, of 48 inmates, why are 44 inmates in a housing area if we're supposed to social distance? We're dealing with more hardened criminals based on jail reform, and my members are under attack. So if the department and the city of New York really cared about violence and not enhancing to the spread of COVID, they would bring us separate, right? They would put less inmates in each housing area instead of having 44 when the capacity is 48. There should be 15 inmates in the dorm areas. There should be an inmate at least in every other bed. But we have inmates on top of each other, and closing 2 facilities is just going to make it worse.
I thought your members are not just rank and file, right? Don't you have officers in your membership as well? How much discretion do the folks on the front lines have to do some of that distancing that you're describing?
Well, I represent just the correction officers in the jails. I don't represent the civilians of the agencies or the captains or the ADWs. I represent the correction officers. So if you change the inmate to officer ratio, and instead of 50 inmates in a housing area, you have the capability right now, because of the staff that we have, to put 15 inmates in each housing area to lower the population so that we can social distance and be prepared for this second wave if in fact, and we know it's already hitting us with these clusters that are appearing in Queens, and the area in Queens is very close to Rikers Island.
You alluded to something that probably we should spend more time on, maybe even a separate segment, which is that you're suggesting that in part because of the reforms, yes, there's a smaller population, but the ones who are in custody are more likely to actually be unquestionably dangerous, perhaps violent, and that presents a challenge for your officers as well.
Absolutely. And there's even a talk of ending punitive segregation. Like, what do we do with the violent offenders? This is very concerning to correction officers, right? Our lives matter. The inmates' lives matter, right? Those that are being attacked by the violent inmates. We have to have a tool and be able to segregate violent inmates.
There was a time not that long ago when your predecessor told me that attacks on officers, including people throwing bodily fluids and feces at them, spitting, hitting, fighting, and all of this kind of thing, was happening at least once a day. Is that still life for a correction officer in New York City?
That is absolutely what we are going through. And everybody needs to go know the truth about what it is that we're going through. Yes, inmates are throwing urine and feces on my members. And how could you have a system where you want to do away with any type of consequences for assaulting a member, for throwing urine and feces on a member? We have to have a tool to be able, right? There has to be consequences. When you commit a crime in New York City, it should be no different than if you commit a crime in jail. We have to be able to have a way to segregate you.
Well, there are municipal elections right around the corner. They're happening about 8 or 9 months from now, where the primaries are. What would your advice be? What would your request be for the next mayor of New York City?
Well, the next mayor of New York City has to be about law and order, right? I mean, we've seen what is going on in New York City, right? They emptied out Rikers based on COVID. There's been like 11 shootings averaging a day. The violence is up, and we have to get back to law and order in the city of New York. It's a shame as to what our city has become.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for now. We're going to wish you and your members the best of luck, and we will follow up on this question of distancing. There are bans on mass gathering everywhere else. Having it in a confined space in correction facilities doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We'll find out what's going on there. And thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me on.